Brother Anthony, thanks for talking to us today. What were we going to say? I had thought of a point that was that a person I follow on the internet, a man named Dan McClellan, had made a point of how Satan didn't really exist in the Bible, and he brought up a point of how ha-Satan was the original root of that concept, which is the accuser concept, which I would argue is kind of the inheritance of Ma'at, weighing your soul. Is kind of like, the Jewish tradition taking that Egyptian concept and then bringing it further into the rest of where they went into Christianity and Islam. But would you like to talk about what you were just saying about Satan being the adversary?
I totally agree. In the Hebrew, it does say adversary.
Right.
Like he's like the side of you that, because they're both equal. Okay, light and dark are none other but the same. God created, he's both.
Right.
So, like, the concept of the dark trying to push the adversary, trying to push forward to try to teach you. It's not a whole devil, no. It's a concept of understanding that the adversary is there to show you things in life that you can't shine away from.
Right.
Like, he's not there to condemn you. He's there actually to teach you, hey, this is right and wrong. It's all part of God. It's all one concept, because light, dark, yin and yang, they all circle each other. They might seem like they're enemies, but they're really not. One's looking for, like, instance, one's destruction and one's chaos and one's order.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have to walk through the dark and make order out the chaos.
Definitely. That's
basically what the adversary is teaching you. How to take your life from total chaos and bring order to it. So in that sense, he's your friend.
Right. In that sense, the ha-Satan is actually your friend. It guides you to make a full transition into a person of God, so that you can take some of the negative and address it rather than be afraid of it. I think in modern Christianity and Nicene Christianity, which I think Dan McClellan was responding to the foolishness of it, he was saying, no, it's not something historical that there's a big bad guy named Satan that destroys God. It is an evolving concept of the idea that there's always this accuser in yourself. And I think that that's the silent voice. If you look at the whole Bible, that when light was created in, I think, the 4th verse of Genesis, that light being Lucifer concept, light, that's when everything started being dividing the earth and the sky, the earth and the sea. All that division happened, which wasn't wrong, but it was definitely a development of the critic that God had created in himself, or that the world had responded to, which was actually light. So in other words, it's a good thing. This mystery of the good and bad of Satan is really exciting to a lot of people. By hundreds, thousands, and millions of people are interested in, like, modern Satanism and modern thought like that. Some of them are very nice people, but they want to, glory in the liberation aspect as they see it from the old order. But really, if you can synthesize, you got the old-fashioned thing of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Not just stuck with a thesis versus the antithesis and then go backward like we always do, like go this way, go that way, left, right, pendulum swing. But actually get all the way to the synthesis, we would have to incorporate the ha-Satan concept into us, as well as everything else that we've got. The goddess earth and the goddess wisdom.
They both run together.
Right.
And a lot of times it talks about, instead of being perfect, try to be whole. Be full. The Bible says be full.
Yes.
Meaning embrace them both and learn how to become complete unity, and your divinity's right there. Your divineness is right there within balance of both. You understand how to create, and you understand when it's time to destroy. When your creation self-destroys itself, what are you going to do? You destroy everything and restart all over again.
Right. And
creation and destruction always runs hand in hand. Or like the Gnostics would say, the womb, the mother's womb, which is pretty much the universe. is the mother's womb. The mother holds the whole universe within herself.
That's great. That's so great.
So I know I'm going kind of off into another subject, but that's what the adversary is. The adversary is our friend, our teacher, our spirit guide.
Definitely.
It guides us through. So I completely agree with what he said.
I do too, and I wanted to let this be known if he ever sees what we're doing, that he will understand that we've processed what he's saying and offer what we've got too, which is the number 9 in the supreme mathematics is both born and destroy, and that's the mystery of completion and the idea that you have the power to destroy, you have the power to create, is something I think that scares people. I think that makes people feel alienated from their own power, and the world being a hierarchical dominating model of world wants to keep us away from that mystery, from ourselves, and keep us from that power ourselves.
Yeah, well, because that's why a lot of times if you notice, a lot of places they damn spirituality. Spirituality teaches you a lot of different things. If I can control your spirituality, I can control you.
Definitely.
And that's what's going on right now in the world. In a lot of places, like here, for example, like anybody we're supposed to have freedom of religion, and anybody who expresses outside what other people conform as religion or spirituality, you're pretty much SOL.
Yes.
I guess they condemn. They cut you out of their whole society, and I personally don't care.
No, I don't care either, because we have to build our own thing.
It's a society built on double and triple standards that is just ridiculous.
Definitely.
I could do this, but you can't do that. Why?
Right.
You see it going on in the world right now. Oh, I can build nuclear weapons, but you can't.
Right. Very good point.
Well, and Iran's like, well, you're a threat to us because you have nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And Israel's like, no, bud, you're a threat to us.
Right.
No,
and the United States looking at all of that saying, we have the ultimate right to have any nuclears we want. We have all the nuclear weapons ourselves.
Yeah,
no one ever questions us.
Standard.
We're the only country that ever dropped nuclear weapons on anyone, and yet we're the one allowed to have them. I mean, no one ever sees that. No one, because we're so arrogant as a culture.
That's our downfall. That's going to be our downfall. That's a lot of people's downfalls.
Definitely.
That's why Buddha going and doing meditation and spirituality you engage in that battle where you start to inflate your ego and you start to come down to earth and realize that, hey, this can happen. Oh, well, no, that never happened to us. We're the greatest. Bro, every great civilization has fell.
Yes.
So what makes you think you're any different than any other civilizations?
And it's so interesting that, everyone's afraid and scared and says all kinds of crazy things about the second coming and all these things about the final days. But really, it's interesting that when John was writing that stuff on Patmos at the end of his life, the Jerusalem, the Second Temple had just been destroyed. Rome was doing all kinds of stuff. And it looked like the end of time for Rome. He was predicting that the end of time with Rome would happen at the same moment. And a few hundred years later, that did happen in the same area. The whole so-called Pyrrhic victory. They had I think they were battling Parthia, battling a country. They won, but they won so badly that they were defeated from within. And that actually is the same thing as we're looking at, the same area of the world with our empire falling. And it's not like it's magic. It's just kind of a program that's said, and it's run and run and run.
Look, Egypt fell.
Egypt fell too before Rome. Right.
The USSR fell.
Right.
They were supposed to be the world superpower. Troy fell. London plenty of times fell.
Yes.
London actually had a Viking king for a period of time.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So
English came out of the negotiation between Norse and Saxon stuff. They had to talk over to work out how to get two different kinds of people to talk in the countryside. They eventually came up with English, which is a stripped down language without gender and without a lot of articles. And if you look at the older languages it came from, they're more complicated. But again,
and that's how they get you in the Bible. We had to professionally transfer it from Hebrew. It went from Hebrew to Greek, from
Aramaic.
Greek to Latin,
Right.
from Latin to Old English, and now we got it in modern English. Like, damn, how many times you gonna fucking confuse the translations?
Yeah. I think what they're after, what I like about our church is
They're
literally
whitewashing it. That's what they're doing.
Well, what we do with our church, and I would welcome anyone outside to do their own thing in their own circles of friends, their own churches that they can build, is that you bring a bunch of different translations, including ones that are very much different from each other. You meditate on all of them together. Like one person might bring one passage that they want to say, and then you read it in all of them, like we did for still do. That way you don't translate on one translation, but you see that there's kind of a hidden meaning behind all these different words, including in Spanish, Polish, other languages that we've used. So
what happens is that it loses its. In Hebrew, a lot of the words sometimes can mean a couple different expressions.
Right.
If I take an expression, say like, it says, for instance, the Israelites were dark colored.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, right? So if I take that white colored out, what do you got? You just have the Israelites. Nobody knows anything.
Right.
So anybody can come in and portray as they please.
Right.
You kind of see where, or for instance, seek and you shall find.
Yes.
Well, where do you seek? You seek within yourself. They don't tell you that. They tell you just to seek and you shall find. What the fuck am I seeking?
Right.
You know what I mean? Words more direct. In the Hebrew, it directly tells you exactly the meaning. It says, knock and the door shall be open. As if you pray, say things within my name, and all things will be given to you.
And the name, of course, is not simply the name of Jesus as a person or like, oh, I check the box, I'm a Christian, but actually understanding the mystery of what Christ is about, which I would argue is just losing yourself in the commandments, Leviticus 19:18 and Deuteronomy 6:5, losing yourself in the love of God and the love of others. Whereas you're empowered to be everything, but you're no longer there. It's Buddhism too. It's the same concept of the non-self.
They all have directions. They all have different directions. Jesus teaches you the heart is the feel, and Buddhist teaches you that the meditation is the connection. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's the connection between you and everything, and that's how you talk to everything. That's how you communicate. You communicate through energy and not through words.
Definitely. And you can tell.
If you're praying out loud, 9 times out of 10, you're not praying correctly. That's why a lot of your prayers aren't answered, because you're not praying in a correct manner.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of get what I mean? Prayer comes from inner. That's your inner sanctuary. That's your inner God. Your inner God talks to God.
Right.
You guys communicate back and forth. Well, I need this and that and this. And okay, don't worry about it. I'll take care of you. But if you don't do it right, how are you going to know? So you have to know how to go inwards. And that's what he means, your inner light. Use your inner light.
Which I think it's a parallel. I just want to say at the end of this, I want to say shout out to our friend DC. I'd like to see him sometime. He brought up some months ago the African concept of the Ori, the O-R-I, Ori, which the Egyptian thought was that there was a lower self and a higher self. The Ori is higher than the higher self, yet it's inside you too, is what I'm trying to connect. So that Ori is actually the God that we are in heaven, relating to the great God, and that is our connection, which is simply the development of what you've already talked about, the internal God, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah, and that could be your internal. You got an internal adversary too as well.
Right.
That's what the Hebrew meant by that. You have your inner self that's that's good, but then you have your darker self that you hide from everybody because you think it's bad.
Right.
And that's what I've been learning how to handle and deal with, because it can, if you're not understanding it or channeling it correctly, it can lash out. It will lash out into your real world.
And that's the kind of thing that you look at the idea of shadow work, as you've talked about.
Yeah.
The idea of like doing mythology, both writing and reading it, to kind of educate ourselves and to celebrate the process by which we make something like that into the rest of us and integrate us into the whole self.
Yeah, because we're going through a lot of revolutions all over the place. I see Deuteronomy 28 happening right now. The meek is starting to inherit their inheritance. They're rising up and they're starting to say, hey, enough is enough. Time for you guys to hit the fucking boats and get the fuck out of our countries and let us do our own thing.
Amen.
Back to what we were talking about with the United States and Israel and all that's going on. Mm-hmm. Me and my aunt were just talking about that. The Palestinians say, hey, the Israelites came left black and came back white. What the hell's going on here?
And there's Jewish people who say the same thing to me. It's not like, unfortunately, a lot of people are afraid to say any criticism. It's obvious that we love everybody, but the cultures, have been used by capitalism in an evil way. And that's kind of what's happened all over, whatever nationality you find yourself in. There's like a call, like a Nazi call to action to destroy the enemy. And it goes back to the oldest kind of misinterpretations of the biblical God, whether it's Jewish people or other people who have been, seduced by the power of power.
Let's be honest. God is not physical.
No.
So we need to not stop looking at things as a physical manner and start looking at it as a different manner. Because not everything in the Bible exactly is literal.
No.
I don't even think any of it is literal.
I agree. I like that.
Because a lot of the Hebrews are metaphors.
Right.
And parallels. Even the New Testament is all in parallels. It all talks about parallels. That's so important that they keep reciting it over and over and over again. Like, you kind of get what I mean? Like, for instance, Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas talks a lot about emotions, and your emotions and your mental has got to marry each other in order to understand, to speak with the force, which is nature. That's what he's telling us in a lot of ways as well. He keeps repeating himself. Feeling, emotion. You can move the mountain if you choose to, but you got to be able to control your emotions. Right. And controlling your emotions is very hard. Mm-hmm. Especially as you do shadow work, because you start to see yourself for who you are, and then you start to change. Right. That's what shadow work is. Shadow work is changing your inner self into learning from the adversary, pretty much. Understanding that the adversary is not bad, that he's just trying to teach you.
That's gorgeous, friend. I would like to leave it on a note, because we've done a lot of this video. I just want to say that, should we just keep that as a thought, that the adversary is not the enemy. The adversary is a person kind of critiquing you so that you can then grow from the critique and become a better person, and then eventually integrate that into the total self.
Yep, that's pretty much, you summed it all up.
Well, God bless you, Anthony. Thanks for doing this. I'll be on the phone with you still in a second, but I'm going to stop this video. God bless you all, everyone who listens. God bless all of you who will listen. God bless you, Dan McClellan. This is never meant. This is if there's any criticism in this, it's not a criticism that's meant to attack. It's meant to help us all of us grow, and I really appreciate everything that you've done.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Because, I've heard that in a lot of different Hebrew texts.
God bless you, man. God bless you, Anthony, and thank you so much for everything you've done. And I'll be on the phone with you in a minute.